KLIF 1190, where the action is.
Keep wanting to come back and go, pow! You know, I want to, hey!
You want us to cue you on those things, David? We know where they end. So.
Yeah, I know you do.
They used to all be on one tape, though. They had like 20 different cuts, and they were all different lengths.
That's what Ken was saying. Ken was talking about...
And you had to guess which jingle was
before they had these cart machines, when they had them on acetate. Now, it must have been a lot of fun, huh? Anyway, we are back. Yeah. We are back, and we're talking about the late Gordon McLendon. We're talking about KLIF. And we're going to go to your phone calls in just a second. But what we want to do first is catch Gordon McLendon the day of the Kennedy assassination. I think those of you out there who were in Dallas at the time will find this to be fascinating. All of us, obviously, who remember that day will find this to be interesting. They give you a flavor for the way the news was handled at the old KLIF.
There is a strong rumor that the president is dead, Joe. Parkland says it is official, and we won't know for just a moment, but there's strong indication that the president of the United States is dead.
Gordon McLendon has just returned from the Trade Mart. The scene had all been so beautifully set there for the president's arrival, the luncheon, and his speech this afternoon. Gordon, what was the effect on those some 2,000 people waiting there?
Stunned, of course, Joe, and a wild scramble for transportation out of the Trade Mart, particularly by reporters from throughout the United States seeking to get transportation some way, somehow, to Parkland Hospital. By the time we left, which was approximately 10 minutes after the shooting, the giant Trade Mart had been more than half emptied of the 2,000 people who had been assembled there to see the president, the vice president, and the remainder of the luminaries. Rumors ran rampant. At first, it was thought that Vice President Johnson had also been shot in the attack. I can only say that no one at the Trade Mart knew very much, but now everyone is fully aware. We are in direct contact. We have been unable yet to verify the rumors, and to this point, they are strictly rumors that the president is dead. We will not know until the word comes through officially, but there have been strong indications that the president has expired. But again, we repeat, it is unofficial. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally of Texas having been cut down by assassin's bullets today at lunch. They were shot as they toured downtown Dallas in an open car. Specialists are arriving at the hospital, which I might mention is a scene of wild pandemonium. As we were coming from the Trade Mart a moment ago in a Dallas police car, there was a call for 20 additional police units at Parkland Hospital. And incidentally, on the 5th floor of the downtown building from which the president and the governor were shot, they have now discovered empty rifle hulls. Should the assassination have proved a fact, it would be the first time, of course, since the assassination of President McKinley that such an event had taken place in the United States, and it would also be the second time in American history that a Johnson had succeeded to the presidency upon the death of the president by assassination. The last time, of course, having been the succession of Andrew Johnson after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Well, of course, the major attention is being focused upon the condition of the president. No one yet has any authoritative report upon the nature of the wounds to Governor Connally. Bullet wounds were plainly visible in Connally's chest, so we know that he was shot in the chest. His condition, however, remains more of a mystery than that of the President of the United States. The President is clearly, gravely, critically, and perhaps fatally wounded. There are strong indications that he may already have expired, although that is not official. We repeat, not official. But the extent of the injuries to Governor Connally is a closely shrouded secret at the moment.
President Kennedy is dead, Gordon.
Ladies and gentlemen,
this is official word.
The president is dead. The president, ladies and gentlemen, is dead. The new president of the United States is, of course, Lyndon Baines Johnson, the second Johnson in American history to succeed to the presidency upon the death of a president of the United States. No one could have been more shocked than all of the newsmen and those who were assigned to cover the tragic motorcade of the President of the United States. Joe was the pool reporter assigned to cover the arrival of the President this afternoon. And, Joe, it was just a little over 2 hours ago that you were visiting with the President at Love Field, live, radiant, and exuberant. And as is customary in these cases, there will be an almost immediate inauguration of the Vice President. It can be expected that Lyndon Johnson will be inaugurated President of the United States immediately here in Dallas. Recalling past events in American history, there is very little weight considered that the United States cannot remain leaderless for more than minutes, and certainly not more than for a few hours. The president died at 1 o'clock this afternoon. That's 42 minutes from now. 42 minutes since the president has expired.
Okay, now that's a reenactment of the McLendon broadcast of the Kennedy assassination. That's just a reenactment, as we said. This is not War of the Worlds. I mean, people turning on their radios hearing that for the first time.
It still gives you that chill, though, when you hear him do it again.
Oh, yeah. Ron Chapman, you were at the station at that time.
Yes.
Were you in the radio station when that happened?
I was right next door. There was a recording studio, Sellers recording studio right next door. And, of course, everyone knows where they were at that time, don't they? It's a cliche by now, but it is true, and remember it well.
Ken, you were on air then, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I just driven to work, and I took over the control board when Gordon took on the project, and with Joe Long did such a tremendous job. And, of course, as you heard, the guy could have been a network commentator very easily. He was just tremendous. Most of what you heard was ad-libbed, and you just can't understand unless you were there the depth of that radio station's listening audience, because it crossed all demographics, and there were so many people who listened. And in the middle of one of Gordon's news reports there, I picked up the telephone, and a guy said, you guys are doing really a terrific job down there, and please tell Gordon and everybody how much I appreciate it. And I said, thank you, sir. And he said, you probably are getting hungry down there about this time. Could I bring some sandwiches and some soft drinks and things like that? I said, I don't know. Why don't I put you over into Glenn Duncan in the news department, and if you'll tell me who you are, I'll tell him. And he said, absolutely, sure. And I put the phone on hold, and I said, hey, Glenn, who the devil is Jack Ruby?
Huh. You know, that's the question of a master's thesis right now. I know I've had interviewed people around the country who study the Kennedy assassination. Though their question to their final students, their final examination is, who is Jack Ruby?
Mm-hmm.
Just don't.
Who is John?
You know, cousin Lennie is here. You know, this is interesting. What Ken was talking about cutting across demographics, and we now broadcast to very small groups. People broadcast to younger audiences, to older audiences. That black and white. Was KLIF the popular station with black youth too?
Most definitely. As a matter of fact, KLIF was so popular at the time. I remember Ron, when I talked with Ken Dow after Ron had taken me in to be interviewed. After talking with him, one of the real important things was the music itself. It had Top 40 radio, the widest variety of music, and it would work today. One of the best formats anywhere, anytime, because music has no color. And we were just, everybody was listening to KLIF. I mean, everybody listened to KLIF, and we played all kinds of music, Top 40. And that is one of the most impressive things about my radio career, is working in Top 40, because you have a wider variety of music to play. And today, I've heard earlier on about, would this format work again? Well, of course it would work again. The mighty 1190, that format, of course, someone could take the same format and do it. Basically, Chapman is doing it now.
Basically. I was going to ask you about that. You know, the music then, you could hear James Brown, and then you could go into Connie Francis.
Right.
I mean, you could really do
that. Why that? Yeah. Certainly.
That worked, David, until we got to Cream and the Iron Butterfly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
AOR.
But basically, Chapman is doing Top 40, the same KLIF Top 40 music and format that we were doing. Am I right about that?
I was going to jump in and say, what do you mean it would work again? It is working.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's working in many different forms, but the same thing's doing it. Mike's doing it, you're doing it on KKDA. However, you've skewed in one direction, I've skewed in another, but it's still the same basic ingredient. Sure.
469-1190. We're going to go to phone calls when we get back, so we're going to take a break and come right back. Listen to this jingle. We'll get back. We're talking about Top 40 Radio, the old KLIF, and Gordon McLendon on the David Gold Show, KLIF, the place.
KLIF is the legend. Yes, indeed. BB. KLIF 1190.
Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo. That's great stuff. We are back 446 here at Talk Radio 1190 KL. It doesn't sound much like that today, does it? Well, let's go to the phones, okay? And I want to hear what folks out there have to say and comments they may have about what we've been doing this afternoon and about their memories of the old KLIF. And we'll need our earphones for these. And Mike, I think you'll be able to hear the callers okay.
Okay.
Chime in when you want to, my friend.
Okay.
All right. Richardson, Texas, you're on Talk Radio 1190 KLIF.
Yes, hello, David.
Hi there.
I wanted to, you mentioned promotions earlier. I wonder if some of your guests remember a promotion that was held in the mid-'50s where a $50,000 check was hidden somewhere in Dallas County, and every day clues were given to narrow down the search area.
Sure, the treasure hunt. Yeah.
Finally, it narrowed down to a little stretch of road on a country road called Beltline between Richardson and Garland. And on that last night, I remember hundreds of automobiles and people with lights, metal detectors, and finally some woman found it in a lipstick container beside the road somewhere. But that must have been the most listened to promotion you ever had.
I was listening now. I'm Ken Knox. However, that was a repeat. The one I was thinking about was done in 55 or 56, and it was found in a soft drink bottle out near Lakewood. It was found just a few hours before it would have reverted to $5,000 in value. But the one you're talking about, I remember. But we did it several times. And $50,000 is a lot of money in those days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's time to do it again.
There's a lot more than Michael O'Shea was making. We established that. But, that changed the laws. The FCC outlawed that kind of thing. Because of that, you can no longer go on the air and say, we have hidden a prize and start giving clues to its location because, what do they call that, mass manipulation of whatever. Well, it does become mass hysteria.
Inciting a riot.
Inciting a riot is maybe what it is. And they would say, I remember, and I wasn't here, but I do remember the legend. The clues, of course, were designed to tell you nothing. They were only designed to confuse you a little bit and tease you. And it would say something like, start with the K, and soon you'll be there. And it didn't mean anything. And people went to the front lawn of the Knights of Columbus, KFC, and started digging up the front lawn.
That's right.
And it went on and on.
So why did they change that rule?
Yeah, right. Why did they change it? Would have been so good. The Kresge store would have loved it.
For Circle K.
Thanks, caller.
Where's our driver?
Thank you, my friend. Pantigo, you're on Talk Radio 1190 KLIF.
Thank you, David, for joining your show.
We're having a great time.
I didn't grow up here, but I was just wondering, what were some of the major differences between, like, what I grew up with, Drake stations, as opposed to the McLendon stations?
Michael Spears.
I think what happened with the Drake stations is, I guess they were called, they're really the RKO General stations, but a fellow by the name of Bill Drake programmed those stations back in the late 60s, early 70s very successfully. A lot of those same promotions and innovations began with McLendon Radio. Drake just took it and shortened it and played a little more music, but a lot of those spectacular promotions and exciting personalities and so forth were I guess, begun really in the McLendon stations.
Well, the question I had, and it kind of goes a long way in what the listener's talking about. You had great top 40 stations around America. KHJ in Los Angeles, LS in Chicago, ABC in New York, WIBG in Philadelphia, whatever. If I miss any, you guys out there probably know better than I do. Again, we say that McLendon really was the innovator for all those. Is that a fair thing to say? I mean, WABC in New York was taking its cues from McLendon?
A lot of them. I'll say a lot of them. You got to give Todd Storrs credit in there somewhere. Sure. Todd Storrs, about the same time as McLendon, was the guy that sat in the saloon and noticed working people putting money in a jukebox to play the same song over and over and over again. Even though they've heard it 3 times tonight already, they go over and put more money in and play it again. And he said, wait a minute. If they're so anxious to hear the same songs over and over again, what if I do it on the radio? He did that, and I think Gordon would have been the first, and has publicly said, Todd Storrs beat him to top 40 per se. But McLendon then added the show business to it, added the news to it, added the promotion and the urgency to it, which took that germ and just made it flower. So, yes, I would say that all top 40 stations, all stations, watch this, all stations that do the same thing all day long, 24 hours a day, whatever it is, all easy listening stations that never vary, all urban contemporary stations that never vary, all adult contemporary stations, all news stations that never vary, all talk stations that never vary, are all taking their cue from McLendon, because he was the one that stopped block programming. Up to that time, we were doing something different between 6 and 8 in the morning and something different between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, and every few hours the radio station changed. When he and Todd Storrs came along, everything changed, and stations went to formats that were all-day, all-night formats, and they never varied. So we all who do that take cues from him.
You see, it's really interesting. 30 years ago, the radio stations were a stepchild to the television stations. That's changed.
Okay, let me take one of those breaks. We're going to catch up on one of these little jingles that we've got here and bring back some more memories for you. If you'd like to join us, 469-1190. We're with Ken Knox. We're with Michael Spears. We're with Ron Chapman. We're with Ken Dow. We're with Cousin Lennie and Michael O'Shea on the line in Seattle, and we'll be right back on the David Gold Show.
Get the happy difference. La 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 la. Get the happy difference. La 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 la.
The legend that's beyond compare. KLIF 1190. The station with the happy difference.
Boot company?
We need more boots. I mean now, as in yesterday.
Remember this big Cliff classic. KLIF 1190.
Cheers. 4:55.
We're all talking up the jingle.
Oh, are we having a good time?
Wait a minute. You've got to do this.
Yeah.
Have him do that jingle. Can we play that again?
You got that cued, Mike? It's going to take. They're all in line, aren't they? Yeah, we can't do it again.
Right. Were we going to show you a trick?
That jingle was designed when disc jockey comes in the middle and talks in the middle and tries to introduce the record.
It raises an interesting question. I grew up in Philadelphia, where we used to on Saturday and Sunday nights, 59, 66, nothing but oldies, on it. And was that common practice outside that region?
The Cliff Classic weekend was a big deal.
They play oldies,
Every other record was solid gold.
So everything was from the 50s. If you're in 60 and 61, obviously.
The original Cliff Classic weekand.
Yeah. Right? In 57, you couldn't play too many oldies. Okay.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's the thing about
it. Yes. Old Cape Cod, maybe others later.
Let's go to our phones.
Unless we're saying that.
Okay, boy, we got all kinds of people. We have a caller who worked for KTSA as a jock on the line. So let's see what they've got to say. Let's bring up line 2 from Fort Worth. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Hi there. Does this all sound familiar to you?
Oh, let me tell you, that jingle you just played was also played in San Antonio, but we substituted, of course, KTSA instead of KLIF.
Yeah, I recognize that jingle also. That jingle had universal appeal, I think.
Yeah, must have.
It was made here in Dallas.
Yeah, they used it. That's important, too, because most of the jingles that they made in those days were made for KLIF, and then that's where they started the jingle business, and they would sell them to other radio stations.
Because they really do sound familiar.
You'd hear those in New York and Chicago, all over the country.
And this is still the jingle capital.
Still the commercial jingle capital of the United States.
Wow. Let me stick my 2 cents worth in here.
Go ahead.
Just a real quick story about Gordon or the situation down in San Antonio. I was doing the midnight to 6 shift, and incidentally, my real name is Lee Perlman. My air name was Great Scott. One of those great names were made up like Irving Harrigan, I guess.
Watch it.
And in any event, it was like probably about 2 o'clock in the morning. At that time, we didn't really have a playlist per se. What we had was a format we used, where you came out of the news with like an upbeat record, and then you had another upbeat record, and then a ballad or something like that. But in any event, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I came out of the news with not the exact type record I was supposed to. And this is like 2 o'clock in the morning. And all of a sudden, my program director calls me, of course, on the unlisted number. And his name, by the way, was Bruce Hathaway, and he's still in radio somewhere, although I'm not sure
San
where.
Antonio.
Well, he was in San Antonio, but I was down in San Antonio about a month ago, and he had left. At least left KTSA.
He's over at KSMG in San Antonio.
Oh, okay. And in any event, he gets on the line to me, and he says, He says, what is the type of record that you're supposed to be playing when you first come out of news? And, of course, I'm absolutely shocked. I can't believe he's calling. And so I said, well, it's supposed to be a such and such a record. He says, well, that is not what I heard. He says, and furthermore, he says, the boss, meaning Gordon, is in town, and he called me and told me that the format is not being followed. He says, if you value your job, you will follow the format. And this was, don't anybody ever think that Gordon McLendon wasn't listening, because he was.
Okay, now, wait a minute now, Great Scott. Now, I have to tell you something that's a good story, because Linnie hit on this a little while ago. What Gordon used to do, and this was purposeful, and probably a lot of you know what I think Ron does. Gordon used to get up early in the morning. He'd set his alarm clock, wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, listen for 2 minutes, and call the radio station and just read some guy the riot act. So you got the idea, this guy's listening all the
Management
time.
never sleeps.
And he never did. He didn't do that.
Boy, he was, I'll tell you.
Management never sleeps. Thanks for the call, my friend.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness. Well, this hour is just about wound down. Let me see. We got to say goodbye to Ron Chapman, don't we?
I'll be here. We have one more thing to do after the top of the hour. Then I've got to go because I've got to be at I'm seeing a thing tonight that I've got to be at very soon.
Okay, because we got you for a few more minutes anyway. And, Michael, how you hanging in up there?
Yeah, I can hang on for another 20 minutes or so.
Great. We're going to take a news break. Come right back, okay?
All right.
Okay, hang in there. We'll be back in about 6-7 minutes. That goes for all of you on the phone lines. Hang in there. We're coming back. More coming your way here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF.
Hi, this is Norm Hitzkes. Friday morning on our sports talk show, our usual collection of Friday morning madness types, and your chance to talk to Cowboy defensive tackle John Dutton. Right now, another very special show with David Gold.
Thank you, Norm. And this is David Gold at KLIF, and we are reminiscing this afternoon. If you're just tuning in, this is a lot different than what we normally do. We thought this would be a great day to reminisce about Gordon McLendon, and we're so fortunate to have some very fine folks with us that can do just that. Ken Knox is with us, Michael Spears is with us, Ron Chapman is with us for another few minutes, so is cousin Linnie, and Michael O'Shea, who is with us by phone in Seattle. All of them are McLendon alumni, and we're talking about the years of Gordon McLendon and radio in the Dallas area. And those of you on the phone lines, we thank you very much for your patience. We'll get to you in just a second. You know, I know that Ron and cousin Linnie have got a split here in just a little bit, and I know that you guys had some things that you wanted to run by us before you have to take off.
Okay, let me do mine because Cuz just gave me a cue. There are 3 tapes in there, and if he'll set up the one that says Dizzy, let me tell you what I brought.
Yeah, that Mike. Okay.
I'm putting together my own Gordon McLendon retrospective at my place too, and I've been pulling things out from my archives. And I did a show with Gordon. We are a talk show we're a talk station between 9 and 10 on Sunday mornings. That's it. And I did an hour with Gordon about his precious metals book that he had about. It was 1981 is when it was. And I got him to tell a story about the old days. Now, most of this conversation has been about Top 40 and promotion. But prior to Top 40, when he had his network of 400 stations all over the country, a really questionable network, I might add, he used to recreate baseball games by reading off of the teletype wire what had happened in the previous inning, and then by recreating it and making it fun and sensational and exciting and so forth. Well, this is a story, and he used to do some with Dizzy Dean, had Dizzy Dean doing recreations with him all the time. Now, this is a story about an early effort at recreating a football game, and he decided to have Dizzy Dean come in and help him do the football game. Now, the significance of this is the voice of Gordon McLendon.
As I say, living in Dallas, I was recreating football games during the first season, Ron, that we ever got on. That was the winter of 1947 and 48. And late in that season, I was doing a game between the old New York Yankees and the Cleveland Browns of the old All-America Conference, since defunct. I thought it would be a gas to get Dizzy to come over from his home to Oak Cliff and sit in the basement of the Cliff Towers and recreate this game between the Cleveland Browns and the New York Yankees. He would do the color, I'd do the play-by-play. And Dizzy did the color. I didn't realize that Dizzy didn't know whether a football was oblong or round. Mm-hmm. He didn't. And at about the end of the third quarter, Dizzy leaned over to me, and he said, during a lull, he said, I've about had enough of this here color announcing. I'd like to do some of that there play-by-play that you're doing. And I said, well, okay. And with my heart in my mouth, and rightfully so, I gave him the first sheet of paper that the telegrapher handed me for the beginning of the fourth quarter. And it said, Marion Motley, who was the big fullback of the Cleveland Browns, goes around right end, 60 yards for a touchdown. Dizzy's description of that was a small classic, and it went like this. All right, folks, he says, now, here's this big Motley, and that fella standing back there way behind the line of scrimmage. He's just looking around, and he gets that ball, and here goes that Motley around right end. He's going way around there wide. This big black fella is just running like hell. He says he's up to the 40, the 45, the 50, the 55, the 60, the 65. And then I just kicked the fool out of Dizzy, and he paused because he couldn't. Then suddenly it hit him. He said, oh, no, fans. He says, here's this Motley. He's back at the 50, and here he comes again.
Oh, yes.
And that is the spirit of the man we're talking about. And there was always that verve and always that sense of humor in everything he did. So don't limit your thinking of him to top 40 and promotion. There was a spectrum that just went on and on and on and on and on.
Well, I know Cousin Lenny's got one of those remembrances, too.
Well, really, I must say this very quickly. Michael O'Shea, he saved me on this. Ken Dow saved me on many things, but Michael O'Shea was because of this, because right off at Triangle Point, right off our main studio, we had a little production room. No one went back to Les's room unless you were a big shot, and I was a little shot. So we had the little promotion room, little production room over there, and so Gordon comes in, and he says to me, he says, Lonnie, he says, I had a tragic. He said, I need to do some recording. He said, I would like for you to go and set up my equipment so I can go in here and make an editorial. As you know, Eddie Murphy lost his life in a crash.
Audie Murphy.
I mean, Eddie Murphy. Did I say that?
Yeah.
Okay, Audie Murphy, who's a very, very dear friend. Gordon was a very good friend of his. Okay, so I said to myself, gosh, I've never set this up before. I don't know how to do this. And it seems as though something hit me. One time, Michael O'Shea said to me, he said, well, cuz you need to know how to do this. I'll show you how to do it, and you can punch this tape in here, bam, and get it started. And everything that Michael O'Shea told me, that particular night when he walked in there, he's a very compassionate person also, very compassionate. And he looked at me and he said, I want this set up and I want to do this right now. He said, are you busy? Well, of course I'm busy. I'm on the air. And he did not have dead air, or you were dead out of there. Believe me. So he said, find you a long record and set this up for me. I walked in there and I set it up perfectly. But I didn't plug his mic up. The microphone was not plugged in. And he did this marvelous editorial. And he was so sincere, and it wasn't plugged. And he asked me, he said, run it back, put it on cart. And he left, and he went over to Capri. He went over to the Capri, the McLendon building.
And you're still alive?
Yeah, and I'm still alive. But wait a minute. This is how he was about this with me. I called him on the phone. I said, Mr. McLendon, I said, this is Linnie. He said, what's the problem? I said, the problem is all of your recording, none of it is on tape. He says, you're the next to die. And I'll be right over. He came back, I fixed it up, and it was nice. He bought me a cold drink, and he left. But the man was so compassionate. He helped, he taught. And like Ken Dow said earlier, he might not have been listening, but he would make you think he was listening because he was on top of it, and that made you be on top of it when you were on his radio station.
You remember that one, Michael?
Well, very, very vaguely. I think Cousin Linnie called me and was crying on my shoulder for a while, and I recall that. I'm going to chime in with something here, and then I'm going to let you guys continue. I've really enjoyed listening to this and participating in the way that I have.
Great.
But it's been just a delight. I guess some of my most fond memories and some of my most formative years were spent down there at 2120 Commerce Street back in the late 60s and early 70s. The thing that I most remember about McLendon was his not having fear of risking, of being very, very innovative. Of course, we've been talking about the sports recreation. being one of the most innovative top 40 broadcasters in that day. Gordon McLendon, as far as I know, put the first all-news radio station on the air in Chicago. He put the first elevator music radio station on the air in San Francisco. Was the first to do editorials on his radio stations. I believe the first to do a live street reporter out, reporting the crimes in the street and bringing all of the excitement of news into people's living rooms and into their automobiles. And he also had failures. He put a station on the air in San Francisco or in Los Angeles. It was all ads. It was all want ads, and it didn't work. On the side of the building down there on Commerce Street, probably to this day, there's a big sign that says Gordon McLendon's Car Teach.
It's still there, Michael. You're right.
Yeah, it's got to be still
with
there.
Arthur Godfrey and Pierre Salinger.
Pierre Salinger, Arthur Godfrey presents Gordon McLendon's Car Teach, and with educational cassettes. That was one that didn't work.
About 15 years ahead of its time.
The man was out there risking. He was the truest of innovators and the truest of entrepreneurial spirits. But as I leave you here, I would say that this broadcast going on the air in Dallas today is certainly bittersweet in many ways. On one hand, we are here to pay respects, and I guess in our own individual ways, to mourn the passing of one of our mentors. On the other hand, we're here to reminisce and relive the memories and our own joys of our earlier years. I guess even to celebrate the passing of our friend and teacher. And although this may sound very, very trite, I think it's probably the way the old Scotsman would want it. So I'll sign off from Seattle and wish you all well, and I'll look forward to getting together with all you guys on perhaps a happier occasion down the line.
Thank you very, very much, Michael. Okay.
Take care, Michael.
We appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And why don't we use that point to take a little break? We have, unfortunately, had to say goodbye to Cousin Linnie and to Ron Chapman, but we're going to continue with your phone calls for Ken Knox and Michael Spears and Ken Dow right here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF on the David Gold Show.
KLIF 1190, where the action is.
About some heavy traffic outbound I-30 East Arrow North. Next faster.
KLIF makes the week go fast, makes the weekend last and last. 1190.
All right, we're back at 5:23 here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF on the David Gold Show. With me are Ken Knox and Michael Spears and Ken Dow. We are here talking about the late... now, you corrected me on the way I'm saying it's McLendon.
No, it's McLendon.
McLendon.
And it was even incorrectly spelled on the front page of the Dallas Morning News.
Shame.
Really unforgivable.
Or was it the Times Herald?
I did that one time and sent him a memo, and I learned carefully from the very beginning. There's only one C, McLendon.
You know, though, Gordon did have a great sense of humor. I wanted to say this while ago because I think it was Michael O'Shea who was talking about it. And when Ron introduced it, he really had a wonderfully wry and dry sense of humor. And sometimes he did things just to cause a ruckus, just to get people thinking and responding to him. We once went on vacation together. And I should add here, too, how many times have you heard someone say that so-and-so is a genius? I've heard that all my life, and I don't think I've ever really known but one genius. And Gordon McLendon really was a genius. And he thought in such a different way. And it was a fun way, and it was creative, and he enjoyed these adventures that he had. And he was such a visionary. And what a lot of people don't realize, we also talked about the failure of Car Teach. But as Michael said, in those days, people didn't have cassettes. And he was in front of so much of the world. And he said one day, we were on vacation, and we were about to leave, and in the next couple of days, and we're sitting out by the pool in a hotel. And he said, Ken, when are you going back to Dallas? And I said, in the morning. He said, I want you to do something for me, just offhand. And I said, oh, sure, Gordon, as if to say, no problem. What do you want me to do? He said, I would like for you to go back to Dallas tomorrow, and I would like you to call Washington, and I want you to buy the Armed Forces Radio Network. I said, I laughed. I said, are you kidding, Gordon? He said, no, I'm not kidding at all. What do they do with it? What does the government got? Besides, he said, you will keep the people in the Pentagon busy, and we did. For about 6 months, they'd have to respond. I said, what do you want me to say first? He said, say I'll give you $1 million. And then, of course, we'll want to go around the world and check all these installations. And he said, what the heck if we end up buying it? They don't know what to do with it. If we get it, We'll have great radio stations all over the world. If we don't get it, look at the equipment we'll have and the value of that. And they don't know what it's worth. It was wonderful.
That's great. Let's go to the phone. North Dallas, you're on Talk Radio 1190 KLIF. Thanks for waiting.
David, I want to thank you, congratulate you on this program. You've taken me back 30 years. I'm a native Dallasite, and KLIF was such an institution. It was just a necessity that you had that on your car radio when you were growing up. But I wish you would elaborate a little bit on, or your guest would elaborate on how closely Gordon McLendon followed the day-to-day operations of the radio stations after it got going in the mid-'60s and later on.
Ken Dow was the national program director for all the McLendon stations, so
I really think that's a hard
air.
question. I think, to be fair, I also have to be honest with you. In the beginning, Gordon was the inspiration and the creator, without a doubt. There was a period of time where he was buying radio stations and doing many other things, and he just sort of got away from all that and put people in charge. That doesn't mean he wasn't checking in, because he constantly was, and he was aware. And anything that happened, he knew what was going on. If you got down to the mechanics of the operation of the radio stations and what jingles should play when and what kinds of records and the concepts they're in and the people who were on the air,
he
really didn't keep up with that at all. But there was a time, Michael, and you will remember this, after we sold KLIF in 1972. And Gordon takes a bad rap about this, too, in the industry. People say, yeah, well, Gordon sold KLIF, and then he turned around and took that little FM radio station, and a couple of years later, he beat KLIF. That's not really the way it was at all, because I sat at the table, and for those who know anything about the media business these days, and anyone who reads the papers see the prices that these stations are going for, what happened was Gordon sat at the table, and he told the people, Fairchild at that time, who bought the radio station for the unheard-of price of $10.5 million cash in 1972. You have to remember that Kexel was on the air in Dallas. It was a beautiful music station, and it had a small share, but that was all there was for FM. So he said, if you guys would like the FM radio station, you can have it. And they said, how much? We're sitting with the buyers of KLIF. He said, $150,000. And they thought and talked to themselves and mumbled for a couple of seconds, said, no, we think we'll pass on that. $150,000. You couldn't buy KLUV, is what it is. You couldn't buy an FM frequency here in the city for $15 million these few years later. So Gordon gets that that's not fair, because he tried to let him have it. So we walked back up the street. He said, what are we going to do with the FM radio station? By this time,
which had no listeners at all.
No, we're playing the Iron Butterfly. We're calling it, people will remember, Cliff's heavy little sister, KNUS, which he wanted to keep the call letters because he liked KUs and he thought he'd do another talk station. So I write him a page-and-a-half memo on what I'd like to do. He likes the idea. He said, just don't make it exactly like KLIF, whatever you do. I pick up the phone, call my old friend, Michael Spears, who's here with me today. I said, what do you think about this? He said, I think it's wonderful. I'm coming in. So he comes in to prepare and execute this format and to add all kinds of things to it. And then, as we're getting it rolling, Gordon calls us in the office and said, boys, I've been thinking. And I said, what is this? And he said, we've got to bring back bumper stickers. We looked at each other and laughed. He said, bumpers? Who would put
radio
bumper
stations?
For radio? And then he said, the other thing we want to do, what we want to do is we want to put a guy up on top of a flagpole.
And have the Gemini Theater on
Michael and
Expressway.
I chuckled. We walked out and we put our arms around each other. Can you believe poor old Gordon? He's finally flipped out. This guy. Well, within a year and a half, KLIF had been beaten by KNUS, and the guy had been on the flagpole for 350 days. We hired an ex-convict to do it. We figured he could do time up there, and people have bumper stickers everywhere. That's Gordon.
Amazing. Let's take a break. We're going to come right back here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF on the David Gold Show.
Big Cliff. KLIF. It's a legend. Yes, indeed. Big D. KLIF makes the week go fast, makes the weekend last and last. 1190.
5:32 here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF on the David Gold Show. We are with Ken Dow, Michael Spears, and Ken Knox, all graduates of the Gordon McLendon School.
Yeah, David, and your show has been hijacked. We've decided we're taking it over right now. We're going back to the old days.
Yeah.
Bring Chapman back.
Can you imagine what people must be doing if they don't know what we're doing this afternoon? get in their cars after a lot, people in their 30s or 40s who have grown up in this area, and they get in their car this afternoon, they hear those jingles, and they hear these voices and all this. They must think this is bizarre.
People used to be able to sing those jingles. In fact, there was a time he would make about 25 or 30 of those. They would go in the recording studio over at Pam's production studios and make up a series of jingles about every 6 months. So these themes of jingles that you're hearing today, there were hundreds and hundreds of them over the years. They even made jingles for every high school in town. Every high school at one point in time.
We had one for you and Brian Adams.
Brian Adams, the Cougars are coming.
Adams. Sure. I remember that.
Sure.
Woodrow Wilson, Thomas Jefferson.
That's right.
David Gordon had a great humanitarian streak in him, too. And a lot of people don't know or talk about this because Gordon never told a lot of people about it. But there were always celebrities down at the McLendon offices. And from time to time, you would wonder what the connection was. And in time, you learned that what was happening was Gordon had, at some time in the past, befriended these people. He had given them money. He had let them borrow money, which he never expected to be returned, and to the best of my knowledge, none of it ever was. But he was a very generous man in many ways, and he was a guy with, he loved practical jokes, and with some of the people who have made up this community of Dallas, Fort Worth, and done so much with it over the years, like Bob Thompson at 7-Eleven. That was one of his cronies. Clint Murkison, who then owned the Dallas Cowboys, was one of his cronies. And they played jokes in each other all the time. They would do wild, crazy things that would make you think of the guys who were living in Paris at the turn of the century. And as a matter of fact, they were in Paris one time, and as a joke, one of them, I think Gordon threw Bob Thompson's watch out the window, if I have all the names correct, and he thought that was a hilarious joke, and Gordon said, "That's funny," and Bob said, "I don't think that's very funny at all." He said, "I'll take care of you for that, Gordon. You'll see what'll happen." A couple days later, they were leaving the airport in Paris, and Thompson had Gordon arrested as a spy. And they handcuffed him and took him away. Took him a day or so to get out of that one.
There was a group of people that he even trained, wasn't there, for a period of time, training them in the radio business?
Oh, yeah, the Magnificent Seven. First we did it for the top 7 candidates in the nation and broadcasting, and then we did it for the 7 minorities. And we always had secretaries like Billy Odom and Lee Robertson there. I always thought they were smarter than we were. And in those days, he had people, he was training all the time. And these were really brilliant people. You could say to any one of them, you could pose a problem, a question. They could answer it. They could respond. They could write a letter for you better than you could write the letter. And in those days, you can't do this anymore. We literally had to take an IQ test before we could work for Gordon. He was a brilliant man, but a fun-loving man, a practical man, and a great humanitarian at the same time.
Let me expand on that by telling another story how he would be so thorough with the promotion. We had one December, coming soon on KLIF, The Big Change. Everything was big change, big change. Promos, station breaks. On Christmas Eve, it happened to be payday also, to stress this idea with the staff, and I mean the secretaries, the salesmen, the disc jockeys. We got our paychecks in change. My wife's waiting for the check, to do all the Christmas shopping, and I get a big bag full of quarters and nickels and 2 weeks' pay in big change. And it's difficult to do, to go out and try to spend that on a couple of nights before Christmas, and it was, I didn't get off till about 7 o'clock that night. But that's the kind of guy he was. He would carry this out throughout so nobody on the staff, when he had a staff meeting, it was everybody. It wasn't just the DJs, it was everybody.
Ken, you were talking earlier when we were off the air about some of the movies, and I think that was interesting.
Oh, yeah,
you knew a lot about that.
He used to make movies, huh? That I didn't know.
Knox, the movie starred.
Well,
the giant Gila monster.
Shakespeare said something about the evil men do. It catches up with you later. No, I enjoyed doing...
How many movies did he make, do you recall?
I could remember 3 while I was here. And
mostly around Lake Dallas.
I was in 2 of them. One of them, in fact, these show up on the Late Show now, around...
What was the last movie he made? There's some trivia. Who knows that?
And the last one, of course, I remember was My Dog Buddy.
Now, the last one he made, he was the producer of the movie Victory with a guy named Sylvester Stallone and Michael Caine. Yeah. And if you'll see the credits on there...
Oh, that was a fine film.
Yeah.
That was a fine film. They had the soccer game at the end of the... Isn't that right?
That's right.
They have a soccer game between the Germans and the Americans.
Think about
the
that.
Allied...
How well does soccer play in the world? If you're going to play motion pictures all over the world, what game do they know?
It's true.
Soccer. This man was not
What about his family life? We haven't talked... He was
married to, for a period of time, to the daughter of Governor No.
Okay, No.
Yeah,
from Louisiana.
Louisiana. And in fact, there were some radio stations that may be listening to the station here today from Louisiana area. Monroe, they had KNOE and WNOE, which were
great stations,
radio stations in their day in New Orleans and so forth.
And Bart, all the children, all Gordon's children, Gay was the mother of those children. And she was a wonderful, fine Southern lady. And I think they were married for about 25 years. And Bart, of course, has been involved in broadcasting, and his
two
sister,
girls live in Southern California.
Anna Gray's a doctor. He has a marvelous family and wonderful people. They really are.
You talk about Bart being a manager. Let me say this. I remember him when he was just a kid. I'm trying to show you how far I go back. And he would come in and have a tendency in the control room want to pull the patch cords,
Bart still does that.
Don't do that. And he would say, you know who owns this station, don't you? 12-year-old kid telling me that. I didn't say this, Bart, in case you're listening, but Buddy McGregor used to say Bart spelled sideways is brat.
469-1190, 469-1190. Here's another one of those jingles in a break from the old KLIF.
You're living on KLIF 1190, where we never, no, we never, where we never give up our ration stakes.
Gonna find some slow traffic now on the downtown Dallas freeway. KLIF 1190, where the action is.
Boom! 544 here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF. We are reminiscing about Gordon McLendon. We're with Ken Knox, and we're with Ken Dow and Michael Spears, talking about the good old days of radio, KLIF, and all the good things that came down with it in this area. And let's go to Mesquite. Thanks for waiting. We appreciate it.
Thank you, David. I'm hoping that Ken, I know, could help clarify some dates for me. I was trying to remember when they left the Cliff Towers and went down, and the studios were located at Commerce and North Central. Does Ken remember when they moved?
I don't remember the exact date, but I'm going to pinpoint that in late 1954 or... No, it'd be a little earlier, 1953. There was another station followed KLIF into the Cliff Tower, the old studios called KGKO,
right,
which later became K-Box. So I worked there. I worked at the old KGKO in 53. So I'm going to have to say 52 just about. Right there's where they went to the new building at 2104 Jackson.
Well, the reason I'm asking, Ken, I can remember, I assume that you remember too, when kids used to run around on Friday and Saturday nights trying to see if they could see the disc jockeys with the windows. We would drive around and around and around.
No, dear, you're thinking a little later because it moved right across the street to 2120 Commerce.
That's what I'm thinking.
You're thinking that's Triangle Point.
Yeah,
that
was
the
old
64.
SO building, Humble building.
Is that 64?
It was a mobile station.
Humble building.
Yeah, that was the one that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. We moved down.
We moved 3 times then.
Yeah.
I remember when the newsman tried to ask Mr. B.R. McLendon why in the world he was going up those stairs, and who did he think he was? Didn't recognize him, and Mr. B.R.
Mr. Mack was a whole different ballgame.
Reminded him that who he was.
Okay. Ken, also, do you remember you were talking about the high schools having their own, or someone was talking about the high schools having their own theme? Can you remember? I'm hoping I'm correct, because we were discussing, friends and ours were discussing this the other night after we had read the paper about Mr. McLendon, that did they not on Friday nights usually broadcast the junior highs and the high school football game final scores?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah.
That was
I was the night man at the time, dear, as Hal Martin in those days, and we used to have the high school football scoreboard.
Well, I can remember that because we would drive off to our drive-in, Sybil's or whatever was around, to make sure that when everybody would sit down and turn on Cliff.
Sure.
Well, listen, I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And Arlington, you're on Talk Radio 1190 KLIF.
Yeah, David, this is the best show you could put together for us natives that grew up in the area and listened to Mighty 1190.
We're having a great time.
One of the memories I had about Cliff was when, I guess it's late 72, when they brought back what would amount to their all-star disc jockey team one Friday I guess they'd come from all the radio stations they were then working at, and
Right.
they did the entire show for the entire day, Friday and Saturday morning. And that's some good memories
That
there.
was the
too.
KLIF family reunion, if you remember.
Was had the station sold at that time?
Yes, I think so. He sold
Their
it seven,
child,
too.
yeah.
That's right. And they would have done that. That was one of their first promotions, as I recall.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious about where some of those air personalities are. Russ Knight, where's he at?
Last I heard, New York City, but he was in Cleveland for a long time, the Weird Beard.
What about
Jimmy?
is Jack Wood still in Washington, D.C.?
I think he's
San
just
Diego.
leaving there.
He was in
in
San
Washington.
Diego, and then he went to Boston. And
He was in
back-
town here the other day, as a matter of fact.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Charlie Brown.
Johnny Borders is telling me about that. He was here. And where's Jimmy Rabbit? Is in
He's
L.A.?
still, I think, on the West Coast. He worked out at KMET in Los Angeles and KROQ in Los Angeles doing progressive rock underground radio. He was,
Wow.
he had the all-electric Memorial Experience at night. And that was the first really touch of that kind of radio to come into this area. He was the one that followed the Weird Beard on the night show.
Yeah, so just some outstanding memories.
Great talent. And Eddie Payne, Jimmy Rabbit, came from Tyler, Texas. So a lot of these people came from smaller cities. Most of us did.
Yeah.
They came here and then grew to the Gordon McLendon shadow, I guess, or legend that he
And some of my contemporaries, and again, I'm Ken Knox, and I go back to 55. That first staff had Art Nelson. He's now at KMPC out in Hollywood, working the all-night show. Mark Foster is out of radio now, but he has an audio-visual business up in Kansas City. Perry Andrews went to Baltimore. Don Keyes, of course, has his own radio station down in Tallahassee. Those are some of the guys that go back to the late 50s, from 55 up to 60. Bruce Hayes in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate the call. And we have, remember Bob Pearson?
Must be after my time.
No, you said he worked for McLendon in the 50s. He worked in San Antonio. Okay, well, he's here with us. And Bob, thank you for joining us.
Hello there. How are you doing?
Very, very good. And you worked for McLendon in San Antonio?
Well, I worked for him in San Antonio, and I worked for him, first of all, when the chain was NOMAC, when he was married to Governor Jimmy No's daughter, and they had KNOE in Monroe and WNOE in New Orleans.
Right.
And I was with them there doing morning drive for about 8 months. And then came back to Texas and worked for him at KTSA. And all of a sudden, they decided to change the call letters and change it to khaki, which was a disaster. And
Don't tell him why.
Huh?
Don't tell him why.
You know the story?
Well, why not? Gordon told him when he visited with Ron Chapman about a year and a half ago.
How did he phrase that? That's for those who don't know. That's a Spanish word, or it's very close to a Spanish word.
Well,
Gordon thought it was khaki, like the uniform, because
Gordon
the military.
thought, since there were so many Air Force bases and military operations around San Antonio, let's get the station closer to the people in it so we would identify closer to the city we're serving. So he changed the call letters, KTSA, to KAKI, khaki.
For the uniforms, right?
And it proved disastrous because all of a sudden, the Hispanic population of San Antonio, not so much them as the Anglos who understood and spoke Spanish, kind of laughed and they said, Gordon, do you know what you're calling yourself? And Gordon says, now wait a minute. And they said, no, we're serious. And so luckily nobody had taken up the call letters. And so 6 months later he changed it back to KTSA. But I'm sure Ken Knox remembers Gary Owens was down there. I worked with Gary Owens right alongside him, and I had a very dubious distinction of being able to do something that very few of the guys did. They had me doing news on the Gary Owens show and following him on the air, and Gordon didn't like jocks doing news or newsmen jockeying, and I always wondered why that happened to me.
David, it was a bodily function is what it meant.
Oh,
yes.
boy.
I got you know, it's interesting. I met Gary Owens when I was on Tom Snyder's show for the trivia, and Gary Owens gave me a step-by-step progression of his career. Have you ever heard where he's worked?
Yeah.
It would read like a travel agency, like a guide to the airplane.
Volume 1 and Volume 2.
Voice of America.
Unbelievable. He started, I think, in Iowa someplace, and he went to Omaha, and he went to St. Louis, every city that you can think of where Gary Owens has worked in.
And he did work at KLIF at 2104 Jackson.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Larry Fisher was with us, Don French, Pat Tallman, Chuck Blower. Remember Chuck Blower?
Sure, the great radio announcer and commercial voice.
Right.
Still around, does many, many things.
Good to speak to you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Bye-bye. We're going to take this break, come right back with you here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF.
KLIF. It's a legend. Yes, indeed. Big D.
Get the happy difference. La 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 la. Get the happy difference. La 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 la.
The legend that's beyond compare. KLIF 1190. The station with the happy difference.
My.
1190 KLIF, 5 minutes to 6.
Well, I want to tell you, I've never seen 3 hours fly by so quickly. You know, it really has been incredible. Let's go one more call. And we have somebody who's been online nearly an hour, so we owe it to him. North Dallas here on Talk Radio 1190 KLIF.
Yeah, how you doing?
Real good.
Well, I have a lot to say. 5 minutes won't handle it, but I better cut it short.
Go ahead.
Somebody that listened to and watched the things I have done as a child and growing up to adulthood, you'd think that this town was owned by one man. What I'm getting at is you listen to KLIF, say, from 64, then you start listening to K News, you know, in the late 60s and on. Then you start going to movies and you see Capri 7 and all this stuff, and you see all this promotion.
Yeah.
You just have to think this was Gordon McLendon's town.
Ran for senator state.
Yeah, exactly. I even forgot about that. And then guys mentioned, you know, watching the Leyline movies and see the Shrews or something like that. And it's, you know, I really like radio even now, you know, though it changes. I'd just like to see what he would do with AM radio. In other words, he got out of KLIF and got into K News and built it into something. He'd have to go back and save AM again. You know what I'm saying? AM was the radio at that time, and now FM is. I'd be interested to see what he would do.
It's a good question. I don't. From what I can see, you'd probably be doing what we're doing now, don't you think?
Well, it could be.
He did it here first, as a matter of fact, about 15 years ago.
But he probably would have some suggestions and and ways of doing it differently. But I think anyone who can see what the contemporary scene is, AM radio is news and information and sports. I guess.
He might make a big underground station on AM now.
He used to describe this in using the analogy of some beautiful dogs. He said, if you're walking down the street and you look across and there are 2 beautiful dogs and you're standing there, you don't really notice them. But if you walk down the street and you see 2 dogs that are fighting, then it'll draw a crowd. And that was his concept about radio. Don't be a big old, quiet, pretty, beautiful radio station. Get in there, make it exciting. Do things, cover everything, you know.
No doubt about it. Well, good thing that you called, because that was a marvelous way for us to sum things up, my friend.
All right, thank you.
We appreciate it very, very much.
He used to always talk about the radio station needs to be. I was his program director, the first program director at KNUS, and he said, we want this station to be sparkling, exciting. And that's do one thing every day to make the station a little more exciting and sparkling. What can you do to make it better?
Well, I know I want to thank everyone who's been with us. Ken Knox, Charlie Van Dyke, Dan McCurdy, Michael Spears, who's still with us, and Ken Knox is still with us, Ron Chapman, Ken Dow, Cousin Lennie, and Michael O'Shea, graduates of the McLendon School. And I'm just in awe of the man, not knowing him, but just taking part in this afternoon here at the station that he put together so well. Paxton Mills, of course, in Denver. We want to thank all of you for making this such a super day, too. We hope you enjoyed this as much as I. We'll be back with you tomorrow with one of, I think, the most interesting people in America today, Congressman Bob Bauman from Maryland. We will be back. Have a great, great evening, everybody. Stay tuned for Thursday night football from NBC.
Super handyman Al Carroll is now on Talk Radio 1190.
Meet me at my new home.
Weekends 11 to 1 on KLIF Dallas-Fort Worth.
NBC News. I'm Alan Walden.